Hola, buenos días. He visto que varias personas se
Good
han...
morning. I've seen that many people have joined to these calls. I would like to remind you that in order for you to listen the original audio,
Dar clic en
you have to
interpretación
click on interpretation, and
saben tanto inglés como
if your
español.
English is good enough, or if you want to listen the presentation only in
Pueden
Spanish,
dar clic en
so you have to click on the interpretation button, and then you have to click on the button Spanish or English in on and off, depending on the case.
Hello everyone, as I seen that you guys joined up
¿Cómo
recently.
están? Veo que
Be aware that this presentation is going to be held in Spanish. So if you want to hear both languages and you're fluent in English and Spanish, you can click on interpretation and then click on off. That channel will allow you to hear the regional languages. But if you only are willing to hear this in English, please click on interpretation and then on English to hear the translator. Thank you very much. Y bueno, sin más por el momento,
all right.
eh,
Having said that,
les agradezco mucho su
I
tiempo.
want to thank you for your time for being here. And I'm going to give the floor to Corey Michel. He's the regional manager at Miyamoto International for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Cori, te paso el micrófono.
Corey, I'm giving you the floor.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you very much. Wonderful to see everyone here for this presentation. I get from our Columbia team. Christian Guevara is a consultant that's been working with us in Pasto on the Prepare Pasto program for better part of the last year, and working closely with Jaime and Inés to develop communications tools in order to work with communities, vulnerable communities in the area around Pasto City. Tend to be very vulnerable communities in terms of volcanic and seismic risk. And obviously working with communities that aren't necessarily technically very savvy. They don't understand always the technical terminology related to the risks that they face on a day in and day out. But obviously they're very familiar with the risk. But what we're trying to do is to express, communicate some of the messages that we've learned from the risk study to them in a way that is perhaps less technical than we would if we were speaking with engineers and other technical specialists. So that was really the objective of this part of the program. And so Christian has been working with to really understand the different methods for communicating to the communities, and then to help develop and test, validate specific communications tools in order to promote these important messages. I just like to, recognize the excellent work that's been done in this area. I think it's extremely innovative. It's very, very important to our broader goals in the region, working with funds from USAID, Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, because our work needs to be accessible, not just by government partners and people in academia and engineering and architect associations, but they need to be understood as well at the community level where risks are most acutely felt. And so that's really the importance of this program. A lot of the things that we've done in Pasto over the last year are absolutely applicable in other contexts. And so we would encourage people to think critically about how they can use these tools, maybe making some adaptations, adjustments to contextualize them, obviously, to the local environment. But I think the idea here is that these are universally applicable, and that we need to find other ways to capitalize on these investments, because they've been This has been a very important process for us. So we gave an initial presentation as a MAG 10 meeting back in September. At that point, we were speaking with the international development team, and process was still very much in play. Now we're closing our program. We have 1 month left of implementation. All of the projects have been finalized and have been shared and in fact used at the community level for training and to help our community partners with action planning related to disaster risk reduction using specific data, outcomes, recommendations from the seismic risk study that was conducted in Pasto in 2017. So I'd like to just thank you all for joining. And again, Christian, thank you so much for coming back to share these important lessons learned. Jaime and Inez, excellent leadership on your part, and it's been a great team effort. So with that, I'll just this to Christian Guevara de los Rios, our consultant who can lead this presentation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Cory. Cristian, el micrófono es tuyo.
Gracias, Cory. Gracias a
Thank you
todos.
very much, Cory, and thanks everyone for being here in this important space. And well, I would like to share the experience that we are doing right here in regards to communications, in regards to the management and the risk management. So we have prepared an agenda. We have 3 important subjects to develop. The first one is the description of the communication processes, which is something that we are really interested in sharing. It has to do with the way how we have done what we have done. The second one is related with the topics, subjects, and content that we are doing and materials. And finally, we're going to have a Q&A sessions, and maybe to share some ideas that may help to strengthen what we are doing and to build different scenarios and different tools. Well, I would like to start with this sentence from a social marketing book. It goes like, it's not worth it to be in the right place in the wrong time. So what happens in the communication subject is that sometimes we generate material processes, communication process in the territorial level, but they are not reaching the place where they have to be. And maybe it's because the planning or the of the materials has to do with the communities where it's supposed to end up. So what we are going to tell right now has to do with a way that we are doing during the pandemic. So it means that what we have at the very beginning, we have been advancing, adjusting for this into this sanitation reality or this pandemic. So right now we are gonna be checking 5 moments in the construction, in the process of the construction of the actions post communication. So the first action is the collective construction. So we can say that the agents that are participating in this process, they have an important performance, and yeah, of course we all have to be involved or connected. So we're gonna see, or we're gonna check 5 steps. The first one is the consultation or the scope of the communication process and the definition of the content by the experts. Of course, we are talking about that some of the information that we are using or dealing with is technical information and is very complex. So, well, it's important to know how people that are going to receive the information, they need to know, because, well, it has to be useful. On the other hand, there is a group, a team, and experts, they really manage the subject pretty well. Therefore, they have to validate technically this information to be shared. Then we're going to be talking about the incorporations. So the second moment is about the pedagogical perspective incorporation. So we are developing systems of communication for this process, and they have to be incorporated into a pedagogical practice and knowing the people or the audience. And for this, we are using 2 strong lines. The first one has to do with perspective of the popular education is very, very strong in Latin America, and the other one has to do, we are incorporating neuromarketings. So this is very important, and this allow the materials to have this pedagogical incorporation, especially the territorial educational processes. The third moment that we have already here is the identification and the analysis of the information needs or necessities in order to understand what the people want to know, what they already know, and how they really want to be informed about the risk management. And starting at this point, we have the construction of the materials, communication materials for the communities, which is very important for the citizenship participation. And we did it like this in regards to the adaptation that we have for the pandemic and for the sanitation emergency that we are facing right now. Finally, or the fourth moment is the validation, the institutional, community validation of the materials. It means that even after all the checkup for these materials, we still continue asking people if they still, if they think that as a community, they can receive this material in the institutional level as well by the experts or the technicians, if the material has complied with the information that needs to be right there. And finally, we have the construction of the implementation pathway and the process of the feedback. The feedback is done in regards to the third moment or third point. We need to identify the analysis of necessities for information, but it also requires to talk about the process of the implementation of the materials and the educational materials. So we need to learn much more how to do it better, how to strengthen this much better. So around this process, we have the collective construction, is the participation of all the stakeholders, associates, and communities, and they are validated, and they also require a methodology for in order to do it. So right now, we are going to be sharing in a very short way that in this moment, number one, that is the consultation moment, we make plans, a work plan, we made a contextualization of all the process of the previous information that Pastor has done in regards to the community component. We also made some content matrices and validation matrices in order to understand what is the complexity of the information that we are going to be dealing or working, sorry. And finally, we make a prioritization of content or content prioritization in regards to this that we call scope. So inside this framework, the virtual online meetings, they were really, really important during the process or on the process. We made an adaptation of the process in regards to the sanitation process or the pandemic. We made management of the content. And through these meetings, we make some matrices that I would like to share right now. We were all able to verify the complexity or the subjects, if the information could be done or could be given in an informative material or educational materials inside this process. So we also determined who were the people who could make the validation. So we had a process, we made a process. So we were able to have the scope, and also we were able to define some specific tools and elements. In the pedagogical perspective, incorporation is the second moment. So we were checking the previous experiences as well. So we were working, Pasto City has an important feature or characteristic in particular, and which is that we have a volcano. The city is on the slide and on the sides of the volcano. So we have some research studies done by the university and different organizations. They talked about the perception of the people and about the actions that we have been developing. So we took all experiences in order to develop the workshops, and we were involved with the popular education and Meguro market. So here it was very important to keep into account that the incorporation implies to have some perspective, imagine the disaster. So inside the research, the studies or the poll or the survey that we did and the interviews, the perception of the disaster, the perception of the risk changes a lot between youngsters, adults, urban population, rural population, and depending on the distance to the hazard. So by doing all this exercise, we incorporate all this perspective in order to provide more information to involve or to imagine the disaster, but at the same time to imagine the practices that the people are going to have every second, every minute, and in all the tenses or times for the people who want to participate. Then we have the incorporation, and this is based on the dialogues. We were able to recognize the environments, the surroundings. I mean, that was something very important to communicate, to teach. So we gave very important value to this, and we need to understand that our territory is an area that has, we have different indigenous populations, and we recognize from their experience that the territory is the educational agents. The territory, we have the walls, the windows in the houses, the mountain, the street, the road. And every single element is going to be teaching us what to do, how to learn, and how to prevent. We also recognize that the community agent is someone who teaches and someone who learns the materials of the community to the leaders, and then the materials are the social leaders, the community agents as well, people in the territories, and they really know when they teach to their neighbors, for example, or to the people they live in the territory with. And on the other hand, we are incorporating a differential and territorial approach from the educational activities, and also with the incorporation of the work that we have with handicapped, blind people, for example, and especially with deaf people. So we work with them and we generate a process to incorporate materials for them as well. Well, in the third moment, which is the identification and the analysis of the information necessities, we were doing the checking of the research or local investigations. We have also a survey with more than 700 people in the municipality. We also have community interviews, telephone interviews, the social perception that we were able to have about the processes that have been done before. We have a quantitative and a qualitative analysis of all this information, and then we analyze their results in order to have better results. Well, this is it. I mean, into this identification, we were able to identify what were the media that people consume much more, what time, for example, they listen to the radio, what time they check this Facebook, the phone, TV, what is the most important media. So people have a lot of interest in, for example, musical material, for example. Because, for example, we ask, where do you read the material in posters? Who do you watch TV with? And besides all these surveys or polls, we were able to identify the social reference, and so we identify different possibilities, how they prefer, for example, to understand. And some people were involved in the educational subject, and also we make a socialization into the community in regards to what we have found in this aspect about the perception that they have about the previous experiences about the communication and education in regards to the risk management, what they know and what they would like to learn through how and who as well. That was a survey that we made online. We found very important information that it could be useful for developing this material and for analyzing the results, and for Pasto inside risk management subject to continue using this material and to take advantage of this material and information. In the fourth moment of the community validation, we define the technical requirements. We have advanced a lot. So this implies that we need to continue creating more material, because the content or the material, we have a lot. We have a very important feature. We have different production and post-production of this material. We have validations, keys, and criteria and adjustments. I mean, the validation has to be very important, has to be clear enough, has to be attractive, coherent. I mean, the validation is not done just like, very informal, like I like it or not. No, it's like, what are the criteria that made these materials possible to have a better opportunity to be effective in the territorial levels? So those are the criteria that we have. Well, in the 4th point, we have the interviews to the community agents. Well, especially right here, we try to know what are the motivations that people have to act out in regards to an emergency or what they can do. And we found what are the agents that they recognize important in their territories in order to generate educational actions. We also identified how they manage their emotions, how is the communication open in regards to this process. And finally, we identified the capacity that the agents have to transmit, to transfer this knowledge to the communities. And then we understood that the transmission of the knowledge is from the elderly, I mean, the older people to the youngers is a little bit different. Maybe youngers, they know, maybe they understand much more the risk management, but the elderly, they practice much more. But well, we were able to find a variety of pieces of information. And in the framework of this, it's important for us to understand the actions. Well, right here, in the construction of the technical requirements and validation, we were able to build some pedagogical plans. They are an structured guidelines, technicals and didacticals, guidelines that might help to organize an educational guideline to do something in a particular territory, keeping into account the information and the previous steps. And here we have specific objects, and on the right side we have a fragment of the knowledge and scheme where it's actually we can set some moments or outcomes for every single moment. And of course, we have some specific objects or goals, objectives in order to identify the educational strategies in order to face what we're working right now. So right here for this process, we have some samples, 5 samples that are part of pedagogical process. In the first one, we are going to know the risk, and we're going to generate spaces for strengthening the community, for strengthening the knowledge and capacities, for improve the capacity of local of the rigs. And what we do is strengthening what they already have. And the second moment, we have pedagogical moment. The name is Arts and Quiet Air. So we understand how the perception and how to difference the emotions and knowledge and thoughts about and attitudes and beliefs, so they can identify their emotions and feelings towards a practice that we are going to find what elements or some information is not real or precise that required to be qualified through these materials. Mappings are 3D ground. Is a process of cartography. So people, they really wanted to do something is much more technical or more scientific. So we had a workshop on that requirement where the people are going to be organizing the layers into a cartography social project and technical cartography, where we generated a space for understanding the risks, hazards, and vulnerabilities that are existing in the territory. So this is a way to incorporate the territory, because this is a physical space that, but it also is a symbolic space, so that we can actually make a relation of those two elements that will allow people to strengthen in the perception of the risks that they have. And also they will be able to propose actions or to have different actions in different moments. So the fourth one is the imaginations of the disaster, the neuromachy, where we understood and we imagine the possible effects of every single disaster. And we make an analysis of the social action, environmental action. And then in this, the people, in a funny way, with images, with materials, they play a little bit in this exercise in order to imagine the disaster, but at the same time to see what they do in an organized way. And finally, the ground motion is or movement of the ground is a workshop that look for where the origins of the earthquakes. So when we have these two elements right here in the city, specifically the people, they confuse the two phenomena, and there is some information generated that is not correct in order to understand the risks. So these contents are coming from the people, from the community. This is what they want to know, this is what they want to do, and this is the way how we build the processes for people to be able to access in a much better way. Of course, we have a moment here that has to do with the technical elements and the validation. And this is related with the contents, and we have here some scripts for radio. We have some materials here, for example, the body language. We have also some material with some reference. Right here we can see one of the persons from the firefighters in Pasto team. So they are perceived in regards to the research or the investigation we did. They are people really believe in them, and especially people really like them. They respect them. So inside all this, they are really trustful, and that's very important for the people to understand better the material. So here we can see how they start designing the scratch from the brochures for the people to give recommendations. And well, this material start changing a little bit, and it was adjusted right here. We see some technical requirements. So it means that all the materials are uploaded in the firefighters website where the people have access to them. And then the material have a QR codes for them to be able to access to all the content. So right here, we can see, for example, that the construction of the content is in regards to the reality. For example, people in the territory are really religious, and they found in the churches a refugee, a shelter in regards to an earthquake, for example, to our social conflict. So they are very safe or secure places to draw the territorial spaces. And then we have some scripts to build the materials. Right here, so we have some examples of how the materials are changing in regards to the validation or to what the people or the participants say. We can see here a poster where, for example, there is a structure and it changed a little bit in regards to the communitary validation and institutional validation. Right here, for example, we can see some elements. The territory is a place where people are really close to the territory in a spiritual way as well. So we wanted to take all these to make it really useful to connect people. It's important to highlight. It's really outstanding what we are seeing right here. Those are posters that are going to be included in the health centers. We asked people where they wanted to read and when they don't read the materials and why they do and why they don't. And these are materials that people ask, and they're going to be set in health centers, in posters, for example, in schools, colleges, are places where people prefer to read the materials. So right here, for example, this is another way to show the advances of the material, how we start building the material and how we are generating adaptation from the agents that participate in them. Well, it's possible that maybe we are not going to be able to listen these audios because, I mean, we're going to see some videos and, well, we're going to try to listen those some videos. For example, something that people were really interested in has to do about the seismo resistance. There is a lot of interest about seismo resistance, to have elements to reinforce the constructions or to think in a safe construction in the future. And on the other hand, there is confusion about that. Some people in Pasto City, they believe that seismo resistant house, for example, to protect of the volcano, and to understand the knowledge that people have about some subjects that are very positive, makes us to create more material like this one. I mean, what do we do if the earth moves, if there is motions to protect the volcanic eruption? My family, I built my house in a seismo resistant, so that's not the reality. So the seismo resistant houses are created or built for earthquake, not for the volcano risks. Therefore, all these type of elements are going to help us to generate actions to clarify content and to strengthen positive actions. So right here we can see some materials that we have created. We were elaborating some materials oriented to the volcano eruptions after, before, and during the eruption as well. Here in the process of making materials, and with this phenomena also, we have to create ways to do the things without not leaving home, working from home office. I mean, different way. We can see some images. There is a girl right here. She's part of the material that we are doing. I mean, she makes education. Here on the right side in the upper part, we can see a man. He's doing like body language or signal interpretations. Well, right here, this is me in the recorded studio doing a jingle, the song that motivates or encourage the communication process. And finally, we have the constructions of the implementation road, the construction of the pathways or the implementation road, and the feedback. All this has to be feedback permanently. It has to be checked up, evaluated. In that sense, people, we are not going, for example, only to the doctor when we are pretty sick. No, what we do, we go to the doctor frequently in order to receive a feedback. In this way, this is the sense that it has. So first of all, we need to make documentation of the process. Then we know, I mean, the communication is important. It's not only to have material, so it's important the knowledge management as well. The idea is to have documentation of all these lessons learned. We also have some processes for the diffusion of the materials and the knowledge management, which is very important and valuable and even better now. So in the implementation road or pathway, we have identified some agents for the diffusion. So for example, the firefighters in Pasto, the National Police, and some other community agents that have been already identified because we have been inviting them to some other spaces for training, and they are going to be the ones, they are going to be the voice of those educational processes and communication processes in the territories. We have some social networks that we have identified, some communication channels that we have already identified, specific times and hours where the people check these social networks so that we can make a right distribution. Also, we know what screens. In Pasto, we have some huge screens for advertising. We have identified the ones that people see or really see or watch, and what are the posters, for example, in health centers that people really want to read, because not all the posters are interesting for people. Places where people are really concerned about their lives. So those are materials that we can use or actions to generate actions inside these fields. Radio stations, we understood that there are some radio stations that people prefer, the community radio stations that are for free, institutionals, for example, the police radio station. People have a very good acceptation to understand interest and educational, and the radio, obviously, the radio of the Nariño University, they are community and radio stations, so they don't charge people. So we identify some other channels that are canalized already, oriented and documented for if the city hall, for example, wants to encourage or promote this material. They have the identifying media and the schedule for making a diffusion also. And on the other hand, so we have the alliances with the social media that can make a free diffusion. Articulation is also important, is a key point for the diffusion of the materials and for spreading out the material, not only for the communication scenarios, but also with universities, for spread out. There is training, information processes in health, engineering, in education, and they have the interest to make the education replica for the materials. So this articulation with these entities made the materials to have a better lasting or a lifetime, not only with the firefighters, but also with the university, Nariño University, and also through the health programs. We also have a database of journalists. They are really interested in working with us. So we also have an articulation with the websites and the town hall. we can actually share this information with a website that are going to be replicated the contents. And of course, we have some indicators. We've been working through these memory polls or surveys. This is the way how people perceive the material and how this material is being used in the territorial level. And on the other hand, we have some educational processes in the firefighters where they also use and will be using the materials that we have built or we have created. And we have a sample for you today. So, for example, right here, we can see we start sharing these images. We have a church. We understood that people, in many senses, they understand the message of the materials, and this is very important. But I say that 70% of the people are not very sure. It requires a clarification. So we can see that this material is strengthening the idea that we are working something very important. People really recognize the important message, and they are able to interpret the material in a better way. So it means that the process that we are doing is very positive. So we can see some other examples of the materials. We see some agents, community agents, a man and a woman with typical outfits from our territory. And they are all together working with the support organizations, participating, trying to do something, trying to be part of the networks, trying to be part of the response networks in regards to this. So here we have some of the material, the QR of the materials. And here I would like to present some samples of some audio materials that we have brought from these moments. We are going to listen very short pieces of these audios because the idea is for you to share it. So the first thing we're gonna listen is a jingles. It's a very happy music for the community. And the idea is to have a better position of the process, of the edu communication process. So listen to the voice. We're going to try to play it, saying, well, the network is not very good, so maybe it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to listen.
Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu comunidad el riesgo de un desastre. Un desastre prevenir, un desastre cuidar, un desastre todos vamos a actuar. Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu comunidad el riesgo de un desastre.
Bueno, no, esa es como la música.
So, well, that is like the music that the kind of music we use in all the materials, in all the events and the communicative processes. So right here, we are going to see. So the material starts with the music.
¿Qué hacer cuando empieza a temblar por un sismo?
Cuando empiece a temblar, agáchese hacia el piso, cúbrase debajo de una mesa o un escritorio y proteja su cabeza y cuello con los brazos. Agárrese de algún mueble hasta que pare de temblar. En caso de que sea necesaria la evacuación, use las escaleras.
In case that the evacuation is necessary, don't use the elevator.
Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu comunidad el riesgo de un desastre.
Hija, ¿ya miro que tembló la tierra? Ha de ser el volcán Galeras.
Calle, mijo. Cuando la tierra se mueve, no es porque el volcán Galeras vaya a hacer erupción, es porque las placas tectónicas sacuden la tierra y pueden generar terremotos.
Los movimientos de la tierra.
Sí, aquí vemos como un ejemplo con las voces tradicionales. Acá decimos mija, usamos la R así como de una manera distinta. Entonces creo que todo esto, digamos, va generando. Y lo que quiero decir es que toda la información que tenemos aquí es la solicitud de las personas sobre lo que querían saber y de qué modo.
Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu comunidad el riesgo de un desastre.
Ya miro que el volcán Valeras está en su fumarola. A decir que va a explotar.
Calle, mijo. Usted preocúpese por estar preparado ante una emergencia. Lo mejor es protegernos de los gases, las cenizas o las
You have to be protected from the ashes. The volcanic eruptions are natural phenomena that we cannot avoid, but we can take care of ourselves. These are some of the examples.
Mito. En un terremoto, lo mejor es pararse en el marco de una puerta.
Myth. In an earthquake, the best idea is to leave the building. No, the reality is that in the modern houses, the framework of the doors are not very strong. So it's better actually to be under a table, for example, or from objects that can fall down. So you need to be laying down and you need to cover your head.
Aquí tenemos a la derecha la cantante de nuestro jingle, ¿no? De materiales pues, que se grabaron en un estudio profesional. Bueno, aquí vamos quizás también a ver un poquito de... Vamos a pasar de...
Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu...
Nos está activando la
Escucha la voz de tu entorno y disminuye junto a tu comunidad.
música va cambiando,
Escucha la voz de tu entorno.
música va a cambiar, a ver,
Escucha la voz de tu entorno.
ya, perdón.
Cristian, perdón, lo interrumpo un segundo. Casi no escuchamos su voz y el intérprete tampoco está escuchando su voz.
Ok, entonces permítame, ahí está mejor, un poco más fuerte.
Sí, está mejorando. Muchas gracias.
Ok. Voy a ponerme entonces, a ver si con esto mejor no puedo. ¿Allí mejora?
Sí, mejor.
Perfect. Now we have Kristen back again. I apologize because we couldn't hear Kristen speaking right now. So we do right now. So right here we are going to see a sample of audio-visual example. It's going to have a lot of motion and it's about the phenomena. Myth. To protect my family from the phenomena, I have to build my family in a seismo-resistant way. Reality. The seismo-resistant constructions are done for the houses to resist the earthquakes that are produced by the quakes, but not to avoid the damages produced by a volcanic eruption. So it is important not to have your house in the volcanic area. So you have to be prepared. What is the most dangerous in a volcanic eruption? So this is one of the examples of the videos where we can do animation. We use body language, inclusion, we design languages for the community to be able to be close to this content. We are going to see that, well, because of the quality of the transmission, it's not possible to see these videos very well, but there will be a right moment to share the material in a better way. So this is a video about support organizations from the user organizations led by firefighters. Here we have another example where some representative or local representative that are very, they create material for the communities. The supports, urban groups, they are companies have the response emergency system. They were created to give support and response in the case of the earthquakes or where there are many collapses structure in the case of municipality in the risks management. Right here, when there are massive victims, or in the case that are required specialized teams. So we can give the right response in order to save as many lives as possible. For this reason, we work the whole day in training capacitations integrated with the risks management, reduction. For this, okay, here in the video, we saw that the son of the agents right here in the city is the Sergeant William from the firefighters. with his voice, with his participation, he generates this material so the people will receive what they were searching or looking for to understand about support organizations. So here, this is material that we can use for this purpose. Well, I would like to say that it's not too easy to see the material through these kind of platforms. So that's the reason why maybe it's not very easy for you to check the material. Here we have another video with a lot of with much more animation where we can talk about the emergency kit. Therefore, we do not perceive the risk. So imagine what may happen to the city or to your house or to your family if there is an earthquake. So what would you do if this earthquake happens right now? So your decision might change the results or the outcomes of your life. So you need to learn how to prevent disasters. Hello, my friends. I'm a tectonic plate that I'm here to teach you some recommendations for preventing an emergency caused by an earthquake. So today we will be able to learn how to organize a supply kit or a kit, emergency kit, and to set it in the right place. Inside the house or outside the house, it's important to have an emergency kit in the case of emergency in order to cover your basic needs. The emergency kit has to be in an accessible place, well known for everyone. It has to be double checked very frequently that the elements in the kit are in a very good conditions. And it has to be easy to move as well. Many of us, we haven't, and it was interrupted. Okay, that is another sample of the materials that we have, audiovisual materials that we have created. So, well, the idea is to create to share this material, and to take advantage of this and to share the process that might generate lesson learns, for example, for being able to make decisions in regards to the risk management as well. So I really want to thank you for your participation, for all those who have been listening to me. When somebody listens to another person, you are donating your assistance. So thank you very much. And right here, this is the space for the Q&A session.
Gracias, Cristian. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Christian. You're welcome. I would like to take the floor in this moment. I want to thank all the people's assistants. I want to thank for the space, for the time, for sharing this space that we've been sharing right here. Vivi, Luciano, Christian, and I would like to highlight this is a process that is going to have a really big impact in the risk management, in the response to disasters in the city. But at the same time, the recovery of the spaces in a disaster. This is a very important component as well. So also, we would like to export and adapt it to a program in the Eje Cafetero region. Unfortunately, just like Christian mentioned, we cannot show all what we have done, to all the results and all the materials, and it might take hours and hours. And so also Christian mentioned this is not maybe the best. Well, these platforms are not the best platforms for sharing audios, videos, and some other type of materials that we have prepared that we were not able to show because the quality of those materials is reduced. So all these processes, materials, experiences, and so on are available for all of you if you want to use it and adapt it to your cities, programs, and also if you want to improve it. Or improve it. And of course, we are willing to help for whatever you might need. So thank you very much back again. So I don't know if there's any comment or questions or suggestion maybe, or I had an insight from all our attendees. I have a question, Jaime. Well, the question. So maybe you can explain for understanding a little bit more the context and the background. I assume that all this work, it's being developed under a social community component in the program. Maybe if you could explain a little bit more this component, what's behind, why the necessity of doing all this work in communication in order to understand the background and what led you to develop this kind of material. Well, the question is very, very important because we don't want to have an isolated material. Well, at the very beginning, we started working in the preparatory program from a technical standpoint. We started working, developing rigs, earthquake studies, and these rigs, seismic or earthquakes, the results are very technical, and they are directed to engineers. And then we started working only with authorities and with the support or rescue teams. So we made a work with them 2017, 2018 for them to be able to understand what's the meaning of those outcomes, because this is part of our component to communicate, to transmit, to transfer technical information to people that are not technical. That moment in 2016 and 2017, when we have some outcomes and results from the rigs study, we started working with other authorities, with decision makers, but then we have to make work for them to be able to understand what was the meaning of those outcomes and results, how they could implement those results for them to be able to, well, implement them in their policies, risk management, or responses. And then we started working with the USAR groups, the response groups, for them to be able to use this technical information that we were developing. After working with them, there was a gap in this subject of the risk reductions and in the emergency response. Is not complete if we do not include the community, our community. So that was the gap that we need to fill. So then we were focused on those efforts for the prepare program. Then to work with the community is very different than working with an authority or working with a rescue group, a support group, for example, because they are very homogeneous group, and then somehow they have a specific preparation for this. However, the community is breaking into different sectors. We have children, we have teenagers, university students, elderly adults, and so on. Everyone has a different preparation, and they are connected in the community in a different way. So it was a challenge to start implementing these type of components for them to be able to know and to understand in what hazards or risks area they are located, their families or their houses are located, what kind of risks or what type of seismic or earthquake risks they are located in and their buildings as well, and what is the difference between hazard risks, because and also why their buildings are vulnerable. In the case of Pasto, they are vulnerable to a volcanic eruption, but at the same time, why they are vulnerable to an earthquake, and why in our risk management study, we are classifying their houses like vulnerable houses. So we started doing this translation of all this process that Christian was showing before, to reach all these sectors in a better way, for them to be able to understand this knowledge in a better way, to reduce this vulnerability and obviously to mitigate the risks. And also to work with them, we are working and to be integrated with the response, with the rescue groups, and with the user groups when a disaster starts. So to understand what to do and to understand the tools or the basic knowledge and how to help, how to support the support groups in those first hours. So that's the way how we began from the very beginning. Those were the cases and the origin of these companies.
Thank you, Jaime. I just want to reiterate, good question, Diana. I think a lot has to do with how our programs have evolved in somewhat different ways over these years. Obviously, a lot has to do with the priorities of our partners, how they want to reduce risks in their communities. In the case of Costa Rica, obviously, our oldest PREPARE program we've been implementing since 2015. The program has evolved a little bit differently. In Pasto, this was a focus over these last couple of years of PREPARE, where the municipality thought it was really important to be able to communicate the risks that have been identified through the technical work to really vulnerable communities. And so that became the focus of this new phase of the PREPARE program. And so I think it's just important to remember that as we continue to implement in all of our countries where PREPARE is currently active, and hopefully we'll continue to generate new funds from this donor to implement additional phases down the road. This is an option. It really depends on priorities and needs as expressed in partnership with local authorities. I think that's all the time we have. I know some people have to move on to other meetings, but I just want to thank everyone again very much. Christian, a pleasure working with you. Really appreciate your expertise and all that you brought to this consultancy. And Jaime, Inés, Lucien, thank you very much for all of your leadership on this important piece of work. This is the first of probably bi-monthly meetings that we're going to have to share things that we're learning in our work in the region and elsewhere in the world. Hopefully, I know it's a global audience, I think, that have participated in this call. So we'll send out an agenda for the next call in a couple of weeks. And until then, good luck, everyone. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to the next time we get together. I think we'll have a lot of fun discussing programs, lessons learned, tackling hot topics, etc. over the next year. We may also move around the time and date, and might check in with you on best timing so we can make sure that most of everyone is available during these times. Kit also wants to say something.
Happy New Year, guys. How are you?
Happy New Year's.
Hey, Jaime and the group, you guys did such a great job there. Just animations and the music and stuff like that. I mean, those are truly the best practice. I think we can use that in California for Seismic Safety Commission, by the way. I think this is something that we should try to use in many different places. I thought you guys did such a great job. I think it's really able to communicate in a wide sector of whole community.
Yeah, bravo. Really great work.
Yay!
All right. Thank you all.
Felicidades, Pasto. Hasta luego. Que tengan un buen
Muchas gracias a todos.